Asda Stores Limited is a British supermarket retailer headquartered in Leeds, West Yorkshire. The company became a subsidiary of the American retail corporate giant Walmart after a £6.7 billion takeover in July 1999, and was the second largest supermarket chain in Britain between 2003 and 2014 by market share. Besides its core supermarket retail format, the company also offers a number of other products, including financial services and a mobile phone company using the existing network of EE.Asda's marketing promotions are usually based solely on price. Unlike its parent company, Walmart, Asda promotes itself under the slogan, "Save money, live better." As a wholly owned division of Walmart, Asda is not required to declare quarterly or half-yearly earnings, but it submits full accounts to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission each November. And, even though Asda is a subsidiary of Walmart, it has more autonomy than any of the other supermarket chains within the Walmart International division. It has retained its own British management team and board since the 1999 takeover. Early history. The Asquith family were butchers based in Nottingham, West Yorkshire. In the 1920s, the rising aspirations meant that they expanded the business to 7 butchers' shops in the area. The sons, Peter and Fred, later became founding members of Asda. Around the same time, a group of West Riding dairy farmers, including the Stockdale family and Craven Dairies, joined together under the banner of J.W. Hindle Dairy Farmers Limited. This company diversified in 1949 to become Associated Dairies and Farm Stores Limited, with Arthur Stockdale as the managing director. First stores. In 1963, the Asquith brothers converted an old cinema building, the Queen's in Castleford, into a self-service supermarket. Another swiftly followed in the old indoor market at Edlington, near Doncaster. Both stores traded under the name of Queen's. Instead of converting an existing building, the next store was a purpose-built supermarket in South Elmsall, near Pontefract, on the site of the old Palace Cinema. In 1965, when the Asquith brothers approached Associated Dairies to run the butchery departments within the small store chain, a merger was proposed. So they joined together with Noel Stockdale, Arthur Stockdale's son, to form a new company, Asquith plus Dairies equals Asda. Another store opened in Wakefield and one in the Whitkirk suburb of Leeds, which consolidated the newly formed supermarket division of Associated Dairies. By 1967, the company had moved outside of Yorkshire to set up a store in the northeast in the industrial town of Teesside, which is still trading to the present day. By 1968, the Asquith brothers had sold the stake in the merger and the Asda Queen's stores became the sole property of Associated. Asda took advantage of the abolition of retail price maintenance to offer large-scale, low-cost supermarkets. This was aided by the risky decision to acquire 3 struggling US-owned branches in the mid-1960s of the Gem Retail Group. The government Exchange Mart stores in Preston, Lancashire, Crossgates, Leeds and including the first out-of-town store in West Bridgford in Nottingham, that opened in November 1964, had accumulated losses of £320,000 and offered to sell the stores for 20% of whatever Asda could recoup as losses from the inland revenue. They received the whole amount back so got the stores for free. The rent was only 10 shillings per square foot on a 20-year lease, with no rent reviews. All in all, a great deal. Asda increased GEM £6,000 per week sales to around £60,000 per week in just 6 months, with the new stores named solely as just Asda. Asda rebuilt the West Bridgford store in 1999, adjacent to the old site which was demolished and is now part of the current store car park. The Preston store was based on the ground floor of a converted mill which had been occupied by a supermarket called Fame prior to Gem taking over, and then subsequently Asda. The mill was demolished in the mid-1980s when Asda opened two new purpose-built superstores in the area. One was in the centre of Preston, located at the Fishergate Shopping Centre, which closed in 1992, less than 7 years after opening due to poor trading. And the second was located in the suburban district of Fulwood. The Fulwood store is still trading today and is a very popular store. The Crossgates store in Leeds was closed in 1992 along with the Whitkirk store, and the replacement was a large superstore built in the Killingbeck area of the city which had opened in the autumn of 1991. Rapid expansion of the 1970s. The 1970s had Asda rapidly expanding to open large superstores in edge and out-of-town locations, and to build stores with district centres in smaller towns. It also added more petrol filling stations to stores, along with car tyre bays run by ATS. With over 30 stores in the north of England, Asda began their expansion into the south of the country with the opening of new stores in the Estover area of Plymouth, Devon and Gosport, Hampshire in 1976. Closely followed by its first store in South Wales in Rogerstone, Newport, which relocated to a larger store in nearby Dufferin in 1989. South Woodham Ferrers, near Chelmsford, Essex and Whitchurch, Bristol. By 1981, 80 Asda stores were trading, but the growth of the chain was slowing and the southern expansion had been expensive. They had been fighting with southern rivals Tesco and Sainsbury's to acquire prime retail sites in the more affluent southeast counties of England. Indeed, the first London store was not opened until 1982, in Park Royal, near Ealing, which was rebuilt in 2001. The 1970s and 80s saw the diversification of ASDA's product base, including the acquisition of Allied Carpets in 1978, Wade's Furniture, Asda Property, and in 1985, Asda Drive, where the company unsuccessfully piloted a scheme to sell cars in a few of its largest stores. These diversifications were as a result of Associated milking two cash cows. The dairy side of the business was making huge profits, as was the supermarket division, and with planning permission for new stores being restricted by local councils up and down the UK, and with prime sites being so expensive, Associated Dairy's ambitions in the short term could only be met by expanding rapidly with these peripheral businesses. Decline in the 1980s and early 1990s. The 1980s were a turbulent period for Asda as they moved away from the founding principles of price competitiveness and good value. Attempts to halt ASDA's decline included the development of completely new-look stores. First trialled in 1985 at a 3-year-old store in Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, which contrasted with older Asda stores with the Spartan minimalistic interiors and chocolate brown and beige art-texed walls. A new green corporate logo which was capitalized as Asda was also introduced. More upmarket and tastefully decorated stores with soft pastel color tones, dropped ceilings and zoned areas, more specialist fresh food counters, and softer lighting were introduced along with the launch of Asda own label products in 1986, centralized distribution depots by 1989, and by the end of the decade the Asda named clothing range was replaced by the clothing ranges from the newly formed George Davis partnership. With Asda, Davis was an experienced and successful entrepreneur who had founded the next clothing chain of retail stores. These changes were initially positive for the company, but they came at a cost. The recession of the early 1990s impacted on the average household budget. and affected the amount of disposable income that the average consumer had to spend. And with rising inflation, it hit Asda customers whose stores were more heavily concentrated in the north than in the more affluent southeast. Harder. The move-up market had also pushed in-store service and labor costs up, which impacted on profit margins and sales. Asda had also neglected many of the older stores within its estate by not refurbishing them in line with other stores that had been refurbished and its more expensive new store sites. One example was the Asda Bridge, Bolton store, which had been built in 1970. This store didn't receive its first major refurbishment until 1993, and was until that point still trading with the old blue and orange Asda corporate logo and signage attached to the building in various positions. And there were many other stores like that. It meant that Asda had left the older, outdated, unrefurbished stores in locations where competitors were opening new stores, more vulnerable to losing customers to the shiny new rivals. Asda had also heavily increased prices across its ranges to try to offset growing operating costs and increase volume sales and margins, which had narrowed within its stores. As a result, customers deserted the chain in droves. This was compounded by problems with start-up costs and teething troubles with the new regional distribution depots, computer systems taking restock orders from stores and then ordering goods, especially fresh food, from suppliers that were meant to come into the depots and then delivered onto the stores were not functioning properly, which meant stores ran out of stock of some items for days at a time. That also meant that the company had to temporarily use manual ordering, which of course meant a loss of sales at stores and wastage costs that ran into tens of millions of pounds. Asda was entering a vicious circle with a flawed and compromised trading strategy and with a management team who were floundering and in charge of a company heading into a steady decline. Between 1985 and 1987, Asda Stores Limited merged with MFI and the group was renamed Asda MFI plc. The other companies in the group were Associated Dairies Limited, the furniture retailer MFI, and Allied Carpets. After the sale of MFI in 1987, the company name changed to Asda Group plc. The dairy division was renamed Associated Fresh Foods. The abattoir and meat processing plant at Lofthouse, near Wakefield, which supplied fresh meat to all Asda stores, was renamed as Lofthouse Foods. But in 1993, the whole fresh food division, including the Asda produce, fruit and vegetable packing plant in Normanton, Wakefield, was sold off in a management buyout to other dairy and food processors. In the same year, Allied Carpets and Furnishings was sold off to the now defunct Carpetland, which means that Asda has since had no connection with any of the firms from which its name was derived, having effectively outgrown and divested of its parent company, Associated Dairies, which it was only originally the small minor supermarket division of at first, and only initially thought would contribute a modest profit when compared to the wider interests of the dairy division, which included dairies, creameries and abattoirs. Near bankruptcy and purchased by Walmart, with stores mainly based in the north of England, the newly focused food retail group expanded further south in 1989 by buying the large format stores of rival gateway superstores for £705 million. City estimates suggested that Asda had overpaid by around £300 million for 61 of the largest gateway stores, 2 undeveloped store sites and a distribution centre. that was far above the net book value of the locations, some of which were poorly sited. This move overstretched the company, and by 1991 it found itself in serious financial trouble and saddled with £1 billion worth of debt. The situation was so dire Asda was close to breaching its banking covenants and came very close to bankruptcy. The city at that point widely regarded Asda as a basket case and predicted an early demise for the chain. As a result, it was forced to raise money from shareholders in both 1991 and 1993 through two major rights issues. Asda was back in the black by late 1993 and completely transformed and revived by 1995 in one of the most successful turnaround stories in British retail history, under the leadership of Archie Norman, who later became a front-bench Conservative MP, CEO from 1991. Norman was chairman of the company during the period 1996 to 99, and remodeled the store along the lines of the world's largest retailer, Walmart, sending protege Alan Layton to Bentonville, Arkansas, to assess and photograph the systems and marketing deployed by Walmart. When Norman left the company to pursue his political career, he was replaced by Layton. Walmart wanted to enter the UK markets. CEO Bob Martin lobbied British Prime Minister Tony Blair on planning issues. Asda, which at the time owned 229 stores, was purchased by Walmart on the 26th of July 1999 for £6.7 billion, trumping a rival bid from Kingfisher plc. After purchase by Walmart, following the takeover, Asda retained its headquarters at Asda House, opened in 1988 by the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. Asda previously had an assortment of 7 different offices throughout Leeds, including Craven House, on the outskirts of the city, and Kirkstall Road, the largest being Britannia House, located at the converted Britannia Mills site in Morley. This was demolished along with an older Asda superstore, which was rebuilt with a larger sales area on land adjacent to the old site. The new head office building brought all of the administration departments under the same roof for the first time. This new building was also one of the first of the new large office blocks to open as part of the redevelopment of the Hughes area south of the River Aire in Leeds city centre, in the Holbeck district, West Yorkshire, during the late 1980s. Asda has more recently also leased space in the Mint office development adjacent to the main head office site, and has taken office space as part of the redevelopment of the former Carlsberg Tetleybury site across the road to support its ever-growing administration, IT operations, and e-commerce multi-channel platforms. In 2005, amid reported concerns within Walmart about slippage in market share, partially due to a resurgent Sainsbury's, ASDA's chief executive, Tony D'Annunzio, left and was replaced by Andy Bond. In 2005, Asda expanded into Northern Ireland by purchasing 12 former Safeway stores from Morrisons. ASDA's property development arm, Gaisley Limited, was sold to Economic Zones World, a Dubai World subsidiary, in June 2008 for in excess of £300 million. Gaisley was involved in the development of distribution warehousing in the UK, mainland Europe and China, for customers including third-party logistics providers, original equipment manufacturers, retailers and their suppliers. In November 2008, there were reports that Asda was to buy Irish retailer Dunnes Stores. In August 2009, Walmart sold Asda for £6.9 billion to the Leeds-based investment subsidiary Corinth Services Limited. The deal was described as part of a group restructuring and meant Asda remained under the control of Walmart. since Corinth is itself a Walmart subsidiary. On the 11th of May 2010, Andy Clark, a former manager of an Asda store, who was also the chief operating officer, was appointed as CEO. In May 2010, Asda bought all of Netto's UK operations in a £778 million deal. The deal provided the company with smaller, more localized stores, with most Netto stores being only 1/5 the size of the average Asda supermarket. In September 2010, Asda was required to sell 47 of the existing 194 Netto stores following a ruling by the Office of Fair Trading. The rebranding of Netto stores to Asda began in early 2011. In June 2016, it was announced that Andy Clark, CEO since 2010, would be replaced by Sean Clark, the head of parent company Walmart's operations in China. Sean Clark officially became CEO of Asda on the 11th of July 2016.